Pastor Carletta. I'm glad Sammy confessed this, so I'm free to confess this as well. I'm having a hard time right now. Carletta Wright and I are co-pastors of Church of the Apostles in the city. And we are a multi-ethnic church plant, Anglican church plant in East Baltimore. We met 8 years ago on a sunny June afternoon, Saturday afternoon, right after a gang fight. I've had the privilege of telling many of you our story already as we've been sitting around the tables, and you know, all of us have amazing stories of what God's done in our lives. And I love the story that God has written with Carletta and I. And this woman with me right now is one of the most remarkable women I know. And we were just cooking hot dogs and hamburgers, doing what we knew how to do to love a community that wasn't anything like ours. I grew up in I was from a white neighborhood with doing house church in my living room with a bunch of other white folks that we just wanted to serve and love some folks. And we knew that East Baltimore was the kind of place where only the gospel would work. And we wanted to go there. And we wanted to find some place where we could pray for people and see God move with power. And so we would just go and give things away and play with kids and hang out with families. And one afternoon we're there, and I see 25 guys running up the street towards us with guns, and they catch the guy they're chasing right across the street from us. And then I see this African-American grandma jump out of her house and start cracking heads. And I'm thinking, I'm not going over there. And one of the young women on our team had told me that she had a dream the night before of a fight, of violence and death. And she runs up to me and she says, "Jay, that's the woman. I saw her in a dream. We have to go over there and help her." And so...
Thank you.
So as soon as the fight starts, it disperses because she got in the middle of it. We found out later that these two boys had pulled guns on each other, and she got in between them and said, "I love you, but you cannot do this in here." And they pulled the trigger. And she didn't get shot. And she's got 2 or 3 other stories like that where the Lord has just spared her. And we went over across the street, and Lisa, one of my friends, said, the friend who had the dream said, "I saw you in a dream." And Carletta turned around and saw me, and she said, "I saw you in a vision 10 years ago." And so we just started praying together. And we started praying every Tuesday night, and 2.5 months or so into this, praying every Tuesday night on her stoop, sometimes 20 or 30 people would walking up and down the street would stop and pray with us. And about 2 months into this, the 2 boys that tried to shoot each other, she was in the middle, they stopped at the prayer circle and asked permission to come in and said, "Pastor Carletta, would you forgive us? Would you pray for us and bless us?" And in classic Carletta style, she said, "Well, you better stop doing what you're doing." But she did bless them. And they said, "Well, we're going to give this block to you. We're not going to deal on this block anymore because we can't fight God. So this is your block. So Carletta and I just built this relationship over like 7 years. And there's more to this story as to how I became Anglican and how we decided to plant a church. But eventually, we found a building that was close to where she lived. And she saw the building and said, if you do church here, I'll bring all my people. So I brought my people, and she brought her people. And we started doing church together a year and a half ago. And it has been a ride. It's not always been what she wants. It's not always been what I want, but we've been learning. And I'm having a hard time with, this is a struggle today with this lamenting because, as you know, her family has been through death and loss, and we've been walking together through that. And I'll just confess, my heart is not feeling the appropriate emotions for what our family has been going through. The level of loss and death and disappointment that the African American community in our cities feel is so far away from my experience. I can't put words to it or find appropriate emotion for it. So I guess all I know how to do is just walk with her in this. And I have the honor, I'm honored that you let me walk with you.
I'm honored that you want to walk with me.
What would you like to say?
First, I just want to thank y'all for just having us here. I would like to thank God for allowing y'all to have me here. It's a privilege and an honor. Ever since when I was a little girl, I would always tell myself that when I grow up, I'm going to have a whole lot of white friends. So I told my daughter my story, and when she met Pastor Jay, she said, Pastor Jay, my mother keep bringing all these black people to you because she said she was always going to have a whole lot of white friends, and she want her friends to have white friends too. Because where I came from, we couldn't befriend the Caucasian people. And we weren't allowed to go in some of the communities. I remember being a kid and having a black stocking on our door. And I remember them coming through and my mother saying, be quiet. Don't make any noise. And I could never understand. I was like, why? I was a kid. But that was part of our identity, and that identified that we was a black family living in this home. And so I had this idea, when I grow up, I'm going to have a whole lot of white friends. And I just thank God, and I tell Pastor Jay, I always say Caucasian. He says all right to say white. I say, well, no, Pastor Jay, I'd rather say Caucasians. And he said, no, it's okay. It's just an honor and a privilege that God would do something in this season when it is very much needed. 10 years ago, God showed me Pastor Jay in a vision. And the vision that God had showed me, I watched it come to pass. He showed me that Pastor Jay will come into the community and that he would help bring our people out of poverty. And it wasn't about the finance that God uses him to sow. It was about the love that we was lacking and the communication that we are now receiving through you, Pastor Jay. And I know that we could not have done this without you. And so I just thank God for y'all too. So now we all are friends. I ask Pastor Jay often, I say, are you ready for this? Because I say, you have to be anointed for this. I'm telling you, because it's only through God's grace and his mercy that Pastor Jay, he walks through this. Because every time you turn around, is always a death in our community. Wherever you go, you see teddy bears and balloons and you see candles around because someone is always getting shot or somebody is getting killed. And I always call Pastor Jay, and they say we come from the hood, and I tell people it's good in the hood. It reminds me of when Jesus says, is it any good thing in Nazareth? And he raised somebody up, and that's how it is for me. So I tell Pastor, I say it's good in the hood, and he come. First of all, they thought he was a police. So they accused me of bringing the cops into our community. And so they said, why would you bring the police down here? So they said, you brought a knocker. So that's what they call them, knocks, like undercover knockers. And he come down there with his shades on. They don't know what knocker, right? I'm explaining it to them, too. They call it a knocker, which is a police undercover with regular clothes on. They don't have a uniform. So they thought I was a part of that and that I was bringing him into our community. So I said, come on, Pastor Jay. I said, just come on. So Pastor Jay got his shades on, his little boots, and he be walking, and he's so down to earth. And so I kept saying, he all right. He cool. And so Pastor Jay, so now when they see him, they be like, what's up, Pastor Jay? And Pastor Jay dap him, you know. And it's a blessing because most of all, he come down here and he show him love and he don't judge him. And that's all we needed for a long time, you know. So it's an honor to be here today. When they asked me about the Anglican, I don't know too much about it. And I tell them I don't know, but just join the ride. And I say all I know is Jesus is here and I'm here and I'm going to stay right here. So I'm sold out. That's all I know, Pastor. And I just thank God. So one day at a time I get it. But I'm going to keep coming back. Thanks.
Can I have like 2 more minutes? So our last Sunday, this is after we've had her nephew's funeral. She preaches. And we have an all-white worship band that's trying to learn how to do black music. It's not very good. But she works with them. And she gets them flowing. And pretty soon the Spirit of God falls because he's always faithful. She gets fired up and starts running. Spirit of God's there. She preaches. We're following liturgy, all right? But we're learning how to let the Holy Spirit lead and just use the liturgy, all right? So after she preaches, we have an altar call. Because we've had lots of folks that have, you know, she just called out words of knowledge and prophetic words, and folks started coming up and filled the altar. So we spent a good 20 minutes worshiping and praying for people until we were all done. We didn't, this wasn't a 5-minute, okay, we're going to, bless you and then go back to your seats. We spent time. She spent time ministering and praying and prophesying over folks. And we skipped the offertory. Can I say that? We skipped prayers of the people. Went right. That's right. That's what it was. And we said that. We just did prayers of the people. And now we're going to do the Eucharist. We always share words of knowledge after when we're ready to actually serve. We've done the Eucharistic prayer. We're ready to serve. Just before I say all is prepared, we give words of knowledge and people get healed. And our prayer teams are ready to pray for people. And we have miracles every week. And all of that is because we've been able to, because God has just given us this grace to bring together charismatic Anglican and apostolic Pentecostal and white folks from the suburbs and African-American folks from the hood. And it's really good. It is good. thanks for having us here.